Hello and welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. This is episode 607. I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility through this medium since 2005. So today's episode is so exciting. I'm really delighted to share this with you. And it's all about midlife musings with the Empress, Alisa Kennedy Jones. So be prepared to be inspired on all things midlife. The Empress is about obsessively curating a less hellish perimenopause, one product at a time, so that you can unlock the power of women's wisdom at midlife to live your best life. And Alisa holds nothing back as she shares her favorite go-tos. And I have a link to them all in the show notes, kimberlywilson.com/607. A gentle reminder to subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast app. I've got links to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon, so you don't miss an episode. And you can find out more about the podcast at kimberlywilson.com/podcast. And those of you who may be new to Tranquility du Jour, a big welcome. And you can find out more about the philosophy, I like to call it the Tranquilosophy, around Tranquility du Jour at kimberlywilson.com/new. One event I want to make sure that you all have on your radar is the mid-year virtual retreat, and that's happening July 15th. Next to the New Year's Day virtual retreat, this one tends to be the most popular as we think about what were those dreams in the new year and how do we reconnect with them? How do we kind of get reinvigorated, particularly if we have lost sight of our vision for this year? So I hope you'll join me for that, where there is yoga, mindfulness, creative play, psychoeducation. We're going to be learning the 10 types of wellness, designing a wellness plan, and really just like pausing and tuning in. And you can join the wait list at kimberlywilson.com/virtual retreat, and that'll get you some really fun bonuses once registration opens. Also, if you missed last week's Instagram Live, which was all about tranquility tools for mental health, never fear, I will put a link to it in the show notes and would love to hear your thoughts and let me know any takeaways. And as we think about, as we close the door on May as Mental Health Awareness Month, we're moving into summer. What are your go-to tools to nourish and really coddle your mental health, paying deep attention to it, especially in midlife where, it's hard. I mean, what's interesting, the data shows that 69% of women report feeling anxious or depressed during menopause. So we, of course, want to make sure that we're doing all we can, right, to take good care of ourselves and recognizing that a lot of the stuff that just feels so overwhelming or intense, there are ways to work with it. Maybe not completely eradicate it, right? But how can we just take good care of ourselves in the process, knowing that this can be a difficult time for many? All right, without further ado, bespoke brand consultant and best-selling author Alisa Kennedy Jones is recognized as one of today's most insightful and original voices on brand intelligence. Fluent in 5 languages, her celebrated TED Talk on epilepsy, which I'll put a link in the show notes to this, changed the way we think about creativity, electricity, and the brain. And her debut bestseller, Gotham Girl Interrupted, became a global phenomenon in the field of narrative medicine. When not writing her next comedic novel, Ellery Albright Goes Dark, Alisa is having the best time ever, heading up a variety of initiatives for Cakewalk Ventures Ltd., including The Empress, Gotham Girl, and DIA. As a memoirist, blogger, and screenwriter, her words have been featured widely across national media outlets such as NPR, TED, and is part of the Academy Award-nominated documentary Crip Camp, executive produced by Michelle and Barack Obama. An advocate for disability, neurodiversity, mental health, and epilepsy. Her collection of comedic essays, Gotham Girl Interrupted, was a #1 new release on Amazon and is available everywhere books are sold. So you can find Alisa at Twitter, I am Gotham Girl, and at Instagram, the.empress.age.
Hello there and welcome, Alisa.
Hi, how are you?
I am well, thank you. I'm delighted to have you on the show, and I'm so excited about all the stuff you're doing with the Empress. So please enlighten us. Tell us what this is all about and the inspiration behind it.
Oh gosh, the inspiration behind it was exasperation. It was like this. It was sort of like a side hustle because I was so annoyed with the patriarchy and Jungian psychology, even though it's very interesting. But the idea that there should only be 3 phases of a woman's life, that there should be the maiden, the mother, and the crone phase. And this idea that, and I'm all for, crone energy and not caring and owning it. But at the same time, it seemed to me that in the messy middle of midlife, that and in the time of perimenopause, when you're at it's not an illness, it's an evolution, and it's a biological imperative, and it's a huge transition, and that somewhere in the messy middle of all of that lay a lot of power, and that instead of leaning into that power and the narratives of those powers, women were being erased. And I saw it with my girlfriends. I saw it with colleagues at work. I saw it in a lot of the women that we were interviewing with the Idealist podcast. And I thought, let me had a really great menopausal, like perimenopausal experience where it was like cracking a code of a puzzle. And so what I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to curate, because I've managed to figure out the things that work for me, that gave me back my sleep, my skin, my ability to not be exhausted all the time and to feel like myself again and to feel like I had my brain back. And I'm just going to go, I'm like, women need one product at a time, a kind of consumer reports approach to their hormonal life, because hormones govern everything in a woman's life. And they start from the time that you're 12 or 10, making you miserable. And they're like writing with a fountain pen. They're so unique at each pen. And I don't know if you've ever written with a fountain pen, but they blot, they skip, they scrape the paper. And they're very uneven. And each woman needs to kind of unlock her code. And so if I could do that by just curating one product at a time that worked for me, where I was like, this worked for sleep. This worked for night sweats. These are the pajamas. I might be useful. And so I just started posting just randomly. You know what? These are the Empress pajamas, and we should lean into an Empress age because I don't want to be a crown. And yet, I'm not ready to give in. And I would rather lean into my power than lean into my, archetype of dangerous other, because there's more. I think there's more to be had. So I started that, and people seem to take to the imagination of it and to take to the products, actually. And it was sort of like, you know what? Vaginal rejuvenation doesn't have to be frightening anymore. And there are all these things. And HRT, hey, we've been misled. There's a lot to know. And there are things that you can do. And you can get your doctors. Your doctor may not want to talk to the other doctors in your circle about it, but you can actually be the customer and the advocate for yourself and get them talking to each other so that you can work these things out, because this is your body. And so I just kept going, and people kept following and listening and talking and saying, hey, this worked for me and this didn't work for me. And this, this was this was something we didn't know before. And so, and then all around the Empress, there were other, advocates and different people like Stacey London and Naomi Watts with her company Stripe saying, hey, guess what? This combination of moisturizers actually really works because there are a whole bunch of like vaginal symptoms. And we did an Empress mindset survey of over 3,000 women, and people flooded in to answer questions about their biggest concerns. And they had so much to say. And the biggest concern actually was vaginal dryness, because women were miserable. They were experiencing all of these genital urinary symptoms, UTIs, and just how. And they suddenly found their vaginas, which used to be comfortable, soft, lovely things, turning into pencil skirts. And they were just avoiding their husbands and walking around like feeling like they had sand in their pants. And they had lots of descriptors and things to tell us about what was going on. The second most concerning thing they had to tell us was that they were really frightened of menopause and midlife, coupled with a chronic condition like rheumatoid arthritis or MS or something coming along. And those two things coming together to cause a kind of medical bankruptcy where they would find themselves in a very compromised position. And that led to us looking, okay, we need to do a menopause and money series and really figure out like, hey, wait a minute. If you say something like, I'm really struggling, feeling overwhelmed at work, that note, if you just say that to your OBGYN, can be used against you when you're applying for life insurance. Like, who knew that? I didn't.
Right.
But we interviewed women where that happened, where suddenly they had a binder and an extra charge on their life insurance.
Mm.
And so it suddenly we began to see where their concerns were, and that there was also this deep, deep need for community and connection.
Yeah.
And so, but also not the burden of signing up for another club, another book club, another social media platform. And please don't give me, and like also don't give me homework. That was, but they're like, maybe don't give me another difficult journal to fill out, because I'm having enough trouble like helping my kids with homework or, I already journal, and it's part of my practice. So what more can you give me? And the what more was, okay, one product at a time.
Yeah, I love this. And so tell us some of like your favorite products, right? So you mentioned skincare, right? So I'm curious, like what have you found to be really helpful? And with sleep, and, before we started recording, we were talking about night sweats and sleepwear.
I was such a sprinkler. So it's such a sprinkler. So I think there are loose. So my favorite of all of it, now that we've tested and tested and tested, is Lusome. Lusome sleepwear is worth, I think, the investment. And I say this, I'm not a paid spokesperson and we don't have any sort of affiliate relationship. I want to make clear that I'm not an influencer in that way. In fact, if anything, I'm a de-influencer. But, I tried everything from flannel pajamas for the absorbency school of thought to like, if I can just absorb, because all I wanted was a full night's sleep and not to do so much laundry. But the Lusome sleepwear, and you can choose between if you're a nightgown or a sleep shirt kind of girl, or if you want pajamas like a Nancy Meyers rom-com. You can get those, but the wicking, and this is the thing about wicking materials, you don't want cancerous wicking material. You don't want carcinogenic wicking material. You want healthy. And so it dries in 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. And that's going to save you laundry. That's going to save you sleep And just that's going to preserve your brain for the next day. Because the worst thing is to wake up and it's usually like 3 to 4 in the morning and you are just drenched. And you've got to get up and take a shower, or you've got to just hose, towel off and change. And that's a lot for women. They've already gone through this if they've had children, or if they've had any drama or work in their life. I mean, we've all had a boss that's annoying and kept us up into the wee hours. Sleep is one of the key things to keeping a person mentally and physically healthy and keeping our immune systems intact. And I think we've seen this through the pandemic. So, Lusome is, I would say, my number one choice for sleepwear. Second, if I could spend my entire day in these pajamas, Petite Plume. I love them. They're beautiful. I'd wear them all day long. I'd wear them out to the grocery store. And they're just such great cotton. And they're just so celebratory. They're dopamine dressing to make you happy and joyful when you're feeling down. You put on a pair of their Paris pajamas and you feel like you've taken a journey. So they're a pick-me-up. If you've got a friend who is bumming and in perimenopause or menopause, get them a pair of those pajamas and they will cheer right up. I'm telling you. And the woman who runs the company, Emily, is just this incredible multi-hyphenate who has just had an incredible career as a spy in her past life as a CIA agent, and decided finally she wanted to retire and quit all that. And now is spending her life doing this wonderful business of pajamas with her kids and traveling the world. And she speaks I think 6 languages, and she's just like a sister. She's really cool. And so it's a business I want to support. And I think she's made this year, she's like one of Forbes' top female entrepreneurs. And these are the types of businesses we should be supporting. And again, another woman heading into her 50s. I don't know if she's 50 yet. She's probably in her mid 40s, but she's beautiful. And she is one of this sort of if you're going to grow up and lean into your Empress archetype of doing and fulfilling your vision, she's a great role model. So again, pajamas, 2 of my favorites.
Yeah.
Skincare comes from the inside out, honestly. And it's really about, I think, just you've got to eat those avocados, and you've got to actually, if you are the right profile of woman, and this gets down to talking with your doctor and talking with a doctor who specializes in menopause treatment. And what I think we are often confused by is that our OBGYNs probably only get about 4 hours of menopause training throughout their entire time in medical school. And so they may not have any real concern or just, they just may not be up on the latest. My OBGYN at the time that I was like, oh man, I'm feeling terrible. I mean, I just have night sweats. I'm dry. Everything is going south. I do not feel like myself at all. It's like, oh, take some birth control. It's just menopause. Take birth control pills. Those birth control pills actually resulted in me having a seizure. I've been seizure-free for 3 years. I have epilepsy. Going back into seizure mode was actually really, really dangerous. And so what it took was getting my doctors to talk to each other and getting with a menopause treatment specialist who could figure out that, oh, hey, her hormones, this is what things look like. And she's actually really super sensitive. And so she needs a lower dose. And you're going to get a lower dose when you work with someone who is working in menopause therapy, whether it's with Winona, whether it's with Evernow, which is backed by Oprah, and a number of scientists from MIT and DARPA and some really interesting folks, or whether it's with Sharon Malone's, she runs Alloy. But the moment you take a look at that, I mean, the moment I started started HRT, I want to say within the next following 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I saw my skin return. I saw things return that were like, oh my gosh, I'm a person again. Oh, here I am. And it was a combination of HRT, which was both estrogen and progesterone. It was plant-based and bioidentical, and also DHEA, but dosed for me because I am super sensitive. And so I did see also the typical menopausal weight gain drop. And that was so surprising. I was expecting it to be much more difficult, but I felt less lethargic. I felt more like working out, walking and working out with weights and doing the things that I had felt like doing before instead of feeling so tired. So skincare was, again, for me, it was about diet. It was about HRT. It was also about the magic of hyaluronic acid and vitamin C serums. And there are a number out there that are great. I like Stripes. I think that for me, I have acne prone skin. I always have had it from the teenage years. And it's not your simple little tiny, it's cystic acne that's very annoying. And so you've got to go. And so the other thing that I came to love was Peace Out, which were, if you're a person, I learned this from my teenage daughters as well. So Peace Out stickers. So if you do end up having something, they've got a number of retinol, salicylic acid, and another combination of else do they have in there? So there's one other thing in there that they've got that sort of zeroes in on the cystic acne. And the best thing is you won't touch it. And that's the most important thing, is just to touch it. So Peace Out, which you can find on Amazon for $20 for a pack of about 40 of them, really helped my skin and clearing up cystic acne. HRT, a diet that was sort of rich in fatty acids like salmon and avocado and all the things that we're always told to eat anyway that are good for our heart. But then also another thing that was wonderful was getting with, again, Stripes for the evening wear. I would say for moisture was one of the best combinations that I found out there for the price. And then, oh my God, another one. If you have to be on TV all the time, or have to be on camera all the time, which I have had to be lately for the Empress, is Jamie Kern Lima's company, It Cosmetics. Her CC cream is some of the best for when you have to go on camera. It's fast, it's quick, you do it with a brush. It leaves you positively glowy for whatever you have to do. And it looks natural. And the best thing is it's 50 SPF and it's filled with vitamin C and hyaluronic acid. And the travel size that you can travel, and I've had to travel a lot lately, is only $17. Right. So these are the things. So when I go through this stuff on the Empress, I'm like, this is the one thing. Try this one thing. Try evening wear. And so that is sort of, I try to keep it encapsulated so that women don't get too overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, I mean, such helpful kind of practical tools. And I'm curious, with that survey of 3,000 responses is amazing. What are the big things that you're finding that people are struggling with in midlife or complaining about? I mean, you shared a few, but there's also right a way to look at midlife as this new, not lease on life, but this new opportunity of reinvention and next steps and next phases. And I'm wondering if that came up at all in the survey.
It did. And it did come up in terms of wanting to reinvent themselves. There was a real feeling. We asked about fear of loss of job, and that there was a real feeling of being invisible. And that was a sentiment that was expressed in the survey. Invisible at work, invisible in the boardroom. And so one of the things that we tried to address in the reinvention of self was really taking a step back and saying, okay, maybe it's time to look and approach like Amy Porterfield or Christina Wallace's approach of the portfolio life. Now, Christina Wallace's approach is, you know what? You're at the age, or you need to be, as a woman, diversified, highly diversified in your career, in your pursuits, in your ability to generate revenue. And so how can you do this in X, Y, and Z ways? That way, if one implodes, you have multiple ways to keep you standing. And so it's also a way to feel and to counter that invisibility, to say, I have a voice here. I'm also doing this here. I'm also doing this here. By the same token, Amy Porterfield's 2 Weeks Notice was also a book that was that bestseller in the last month. And she takes a tack. This is a moment where you can really take some strides to muster and find your courage, because courage is what holds people. And that confidence is, and they're different things, but it's what holds people back and keeps them in the dead end job and keeps them from diversifying and living that, portfolio life. And what I mean is, she's like, what can you teach? How can you be a coach to someone? How could you lead that retreat? How could you, create a passive income stream? And everybody's all about passive income streams these days. I know it's very hot, but she's like, here are the tools that you could put in place if you wanted to do this sort of thing. If you wanted to diversify your income stream, and you've got a lot more knowledge. And I think that, one of the wisest things that came out of both of these books is that we tend to undervalue the things that come most easily to us. So, like, the things that come most easily to me are writing jokes. And so, and I tend to undervalue that, and I do it on Twitter a lot. But it turns out I was able to turn those pithy one-liners into television shows and a Hallmark movie. And took me a while. It took me 20 years to realize that I could do that. But again, those sort of one-liners and those snarky, pithy things that I undervalue, that I write off as me just being a smartass, those tend to be the most valuable things that you might have. And so you have to look around your life is what they're saying. And there's also a coach who has a similar kind of message. She's like, you need to look around your life and say, what am I really good at here? And, the other thing that I am really good at is throwing kids' birthday parties. Turns out I'm an amazing fairy birthday party thrower. I run a whole business called Once Upon a Party and throw kids' birthdays for fairies, every theme going. Everyone has costumes. No AI can do that. So, there are women who are, able at this moment in time, because they're not changing so many diapers, because they're not running after their boss with a PowerPoint anymore, that they could look around their lives and say, I could do that. That side hustle could be one of my things that might be a thing.
I like this. Yeah. I just noted I'm not familiar with Christina Wallace, so I'll have to check her out. And of course,
she's a Harvard business teacher, and she is really something. And she's not, I would say she is not in the category of the Tony Robbins's, motivational speakers in the way that, say, Amy Porterfield worked for Tony Robbins. And so she's in that coaching kind of world, which can be kind of, but she is very careful about how you strategize. And women in particular, we know this from all the statistics from Elvest, from Sally Krawcheck. And I remember being on phone calls with her when she was just starting Elvest, that women are 80% more likely. And this definitely came out as a fear in the survey, that they are 80% more likely to live and spend retirement in poverty than men. And this is a terrifying statistic for me. I think, and for a lot of women, because, and they're simply doing it not just because of the lack in wage parity, but because they live longer. They live 10 years longer. They're much more likely to be single and alone. And so women need each other. And they also, because of the lack of wage parity throughout their entire careers, they have 70% saved for retirement than men have. And they are more than likely to be divorced. And they may not have known or have had the advice from their attorneys as they were going through the divorce that they had a right to their husband's retirement. And that's something that, that again, you don't know it until it's too late. And so women need to, they need to come together and be their own, that lean into ruling this part of their lives rather than being alienated by it, made invisible by it, and made other by it. And that's why I vote for Empress over Crone.
Totally. I do. And you know what? The word that you keep using that I think is so important and that I hear constantly is the invisibility, right? It's so important for a woman of any age, right, to feel seen. But I think particularly a woman of a certain age, it's this not feeling visible, not feeling seen in the way that potentially we were when we were younger, and how to really cope with that, right? In a way that allows us to feel like we matter and that we are still able to make a big difference in this world.
Well, yeah. And it's so systemically ingrained. There's this wonderful journalist who covers midlife and menopause. She'd be fantastic for your show. Her name is Anne-Marie McQueen. She's based out of Dubai, but she did this fabulous experiment that I wrote about on the Empress newsletter, which is she fed menopausal and woman into Chat GPT and asked it to draw sketches of us. And you would be shocked what it came back with. I mean, oh my goodness. And if the AI if this is how the AI sees us, you can go and see them at theempressage.com. They're up. It's just like, how do we break the stigma when it's so coded into the system that we're either invisible or we're that? And the sketches are these women that are just sort of crying and their lipstick is all wrong and they're wrinkled and they've got, the bad, like grandma haircuts. And this, it's just like, and, she really, when I saw what she did, I just thought she was a genius. And I also thought, what, I can look around and we could start the Empress 100 list. And there are well over 100 uncelebrated, fantastic women who do not look like this, who are well into their, 40s and 50s and amazing. Just look at Helen Mirren. Gosh, she looks fantastic in a bikini. And look at those long silvery tresses. They're fabulous. And so it made me want to say, wait a minute. No, look at all these women who are amazing. But if you also look at like Oprah's recent summit, her class that she held on menopause, where she had Sharon Malone from Alloy and Drew Barrymore. And Drew Barrymore said very plainly, she's like, we need to rebrand this era of our lives. I don't want to be this dry, dusty woman. I'm not this dry, dusty woman. But then I think about Oprah's been trying to rebrand menopause since, she's almost 70, right? And she's been trying to rebrand perimenopause, I think, for 20 years. What's it going to take?
Maybe the Empress.
I think I'm just a tiny potato here. I think a lot of empresses, not just a lowly writer.
Well, let me ask you this. Like, what would you say, kind of, before I ask you my last question, what would you say are some of your favorite tips to share with our listeners who are in this stage of life? And like, how do I feel more plump and vibrant and alive? Yeah. What would you say? Or you're like, okay, here are my go-to tips.
My go-to tips. Thinking about the book, actually, because I'm just starting to write the book right now, and we're in the middle of putting together how to Empress your life. And I think, obviously there's the vision portion of things, and there are plenty of books out there that say, you're a badass. Stop giving so many leaps and what. And I think what it's going to be about is understanding the primal and historical and mythical nature and etymology of the word Empress and what it means historically, way back, which is that if you look at pre-dynasty, the goddess Neith, who is the goddess of all goddesses, she's like pre-Greek, pre-Hellenic goddess, pre-Roman gods, didn't need a man to procreate, and it was essentially the empress and goddess of all gods. And the idea of the Empress, as you can cut around this, is that they are the maker of ways and the maker of the pathways, the opener of ways. And what you need to do for whatever it is you're stuck on, whether it's with your girlfriends or whether it's with one little thing that opens up a way for you, you need to be your own waymaker. You need to open your path. You need to be able to make a path. And it's maybe forwards or backwards, because there's a wonderful quote about living backwards from Beth Ann Patrick. She's like, I don't want to live backwards. I'm ready to go back to New York and live and sow my wild oats. And I'm about to be 60. But that's what it is. It's like opening up and making a way. And that is the meaning of the Empress. She made all things possible. If you look at the first Empress, she was considered quite powerful. And I write about her in the book, the Chinese Empress, and she was quite bloody. But Catherine the Great also was another one. But it was about making a way forward for Russia and bringing Russia into the modern Western world, whether it was through art or education, and anything was possible. And that's what made people so angry with her. And that was the quote, actually, when she defeated Peter the Great. Didn't I tell you? She's capable of anything. And that's the thing, is you have to realize you're capable of anything. You have to be your own way maker. And that's the meaning of Empress, is to make your way.
Love it. That's a great reminder, especially as we think about, this next phase in our lives. And, my last question for you is, of course, the name of the podcast is Tranquility du Jour. And so I wonder, with everything that you have on your plate right now, honey, like I made a list too, by the way. I was like, she's got a lot of things she wants to do. New podcast, a bookshop, upcoming digital and luxury weekend retreats, New
partnership.
partnership.
Yeah.
And Cultish Weekly Newsletter. I mean, yeah, things that are on the radar. Oh, and your freaking book, right? So I'm like, she's got a lot going on. So how are you finding tranquility in your everyday with all of the pieces you're juggling and your dreams?
So the Empress takes a lot of time, but I happen to live in the most beautiful place. I live right next to Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, right? I've been home this last couple of years from New York because I've been looking after my dad, and how I get peace. It's just like a serotonin or a dopamine shot every time the bells of the cathedral, and they go off multiple times a day. They're fantastic. But I also live next to this amazing rose garden. And I go on these walks with my little old ladies, and I go 2 miles, and it's overlooking the bay. So it's water, it's sunlight, and it's roses, and it's women. And those walks with these women, and they're the same women, and they range in age from, I want to say 38 to 88. And we're all out there. And I have this one sweatshirt that I wear, it says Good Witch. And that keeps those walks with these women keep me so grounded. And I never come back from one of those walks without new ideas or, refinements, like things we can do to make the Empress just a little more interesting. And not we may have the laundry list of partnerships and things we want to do, and it's all going to just take time.
Totally. I love it. I know someone who teaches yoga at Grace Cathedral, or who used to. I don't know if you've gone over there.
They're wonderful on Tuesdays.
Oh my God. Yeah. Doll. Tell him I said hello. He's a dear soul.
Yeah. I love my neighborhood. I know people hate San Francisco right now, but in the neighborhoods that our little neighborhood, it's just so sweet, and people are still keeping on.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I just have to say, I'm so excited about what you're doing with this whole midlife piece, because it definitely is where I am and where I'm headed, obviously. And so it's fun to have a kindred soul out there.
Yeah. And I would love to, when we do the actual retreat, I would love to have you at them. I just feel like you'd be such a good energy and spirit. I want people to know about what you're doing. I just think it's so amazing. And I think I want them to be dancing their way through life. I really believe in it.
Absolutely.
So in the show notes, as I mentioned, I have links. She was so sweet to follow up with links of I mentioned this and this and this, because I was trying to pin them down as she was talking, and I knew I wasn't getting all of them. So anyway, you will find a link to these products over in the show notes. And then finally, a gentle reminder to check out, of course, the Empress. I love following her on Substack. And if you are not yet signed up for my love notes, their invites, inspiration, and more, would love to share them with you and pop into your inbox weekly with insights, thoughts on what is going on in my world, and ways to really, embrace this idea of everyday tranquility in our own. There's also a link to my 6 books and planners, and ways to follow along Tranquility du Jour on Instagram and YouTube. Both are at Tranquility du Jour. There's also a link to shop my seasonless, locally sewn, eco-friendly fashion line, TDJ. And then if you have a moment to pin a review on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, or Goodreads of any of the books, would be so, so grateful, and you may just hear it on the show. So as always, thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a delicious rest of your Memorial Day, those of you stateside and are downloading this the day it releases. And I hope that as we move into June, my 50th birthday month. And also, really, it's like the start of summer. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, I hope that you are able to really, really savor taking good care of yourself, juicy watermelon on your skin, the smell of honeysuckle, the sounds of the birds, is really tapping into your senses. And thank you, as always, for being here.